welcome everyone who have been joining us here. And sorry for keeping you waiting. We had some slight tech hiccup and issues. All fun and games with this new world of doing online events. So this is going to be an interesting session. Hopefully you'll all enjoy it. We're going to talk about how to build a data-driven sales and marketing organization. My name is Mikael Johnsson. I'm a general partner and co-founder of Ox. We're a specialist niche venture capital firm investing exclusively in B2B SaaS companies across Europe that have found product market fit. And I have the pleasure today to have with me my good friend and collaborator around Funnel, CEO and co-founder Fredrik. Fredrik, do you want to give a brief introduction to yourself and Funnel, perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm co-founder and CEO of Funnel. My background is I spent about 12 years in the US in working enterprise software, 7 years in the UK, founding an e-commerce company, and then I spent now the last 10 years building SaaS companies in Stockholm in Sweden. And Funnel is basically something that, from my perspective, came out of running an e-commerce company. I found it very hard as a marketer to really understand what's happening in real time and what the performance of my marketing campaigns was. And it boiled down to having access to all my data and being able to put that together and really being able to answer the question of, what happened yesterday, which marketing activities worked well. And that's what Funnel does.
Excellent. You have been reasonably successful in doing this, not least getting accolades like hottest European B2B SaaS company of the year this year and stuff. So it's been a interesting ride, and it's certainly a market segment where there seems to be a lot of demand.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've I wouldn't say it's been a completely straight journey. We've sort of like most companies, we worked a bit until we really found product market fit. But then, we really managed to take it to the next stage and build a really successful data-driven and predictable go-to-market machine and sort of really scale it up. And last year was a great year for us. We grew about 107% and grew the team from 70 to 140 people. And so now starting to get to more of a scale-up company.
Excellent. Okay, so we're going to talk about how to build a data-driven sales and marketing organization. That is something that Funnel actually has. So could you perhaps start by explaining what the actual Funnel product does and what your sales and marketing process looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So again, we are a SaaS company. We work with marketing organization. We collect their data from them. We charge a monthly or annual subscription for that. Annual contract value around $20,000 a year. And we have built out, and I think to start off with, I think one important thing is that what you want is a data-driven go-to-market machine, but every company will have a different go-to-market model and a different sales machine, depending on sort of, what vertical you're in and what the founding team is and what your deal size is and how you want to go after the market. So everything's a bit different. And you got to find yours. So what I can speak about to start off with is sort of, what ours looks like. And so the first thing we've done, which is very much widely considered best practice in SaaS, is to separate lead generation from actual sales. And for us, lead generation is mainly inbound. So we basically, our sales funnel starts off with signups on the web, and we have automated our web to make it do as much work as possible. So as a potential prospect, you can go in on the web and you can actually book a meeting there with sales. So then there is a set of stages that we go through. So the next one is booking a meeting. After that, sales will qualify you, and sales will take a meeting with you. And if it really is considered a good prospect, they'll do a demo. So delivering a demo is a pretty important event for us. That's kind of when sales has accepted that this is a good lead, a good opportunity. So something like a sales qualified lead. and maybe a booked meeting is a marketing qualified lead. And then after that, if the prospect wants to take it further, and if we feel there's a good fit, then the next stage is a trial, which is, from our perspective, something we invest a lot in. There's a product specialist involved, and it's quite high quality, and with that, a high likelihood that the prospect will be a customer. And then after that, you have a closed customer. And with this, we have statistics. So every month we book on average 1,000. We get on average 1,000 signups, and then that sort of trickles down to about, in the end, 40 closed customers in a month. Not every month is the same. Some months we have 1,200 signups. Some months we have 800 signups. Some months we have 35 customers. Some months 45. But it's still a pretty narrow range. And that's one of the really big advantages of having a data-driven, predictable go-to-market model. And this is every month. It's not sort of per quarter. You have this predictability, and that's working very well for us.
Excellent. So it's obvious that this is a very structured approach to how you actually drive this stuff. But I'm guessing, in a sense, every customer has its own quirks, and every customer has some uniqueness to it. So are there any variations to this process depending on whether you're selling to a small e-commerce company or like a large enterprise, or does it look the same no matter who you're selling to, essentially?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we started out the same, and I think that's a good way to start it. And then we observed it, and we said, okay, well, the cost of selling is a bit too high for really small customers to do a trial, involve a product specialist. So then we separated it out so that we had an SME sales team, and they do more. They do the trial themselves. They handle everything. It's not so many handoffs. And then on sort of the super enterprise side, we said, okay, well, here we need even more. We need maybe a data engineer involved. We need further, almost like professional services. So then we sort of separated that out into an enterprise team as well. And some of those really large enterprises sometimes are outbound as well. And then it's a different sales process. When it's inbound, they actually want to talk to you. When it's outbound, you can't start the meeting with, okay, hey, you actually got to keep selling. So it's a little bit different. But so over time, I think start with one process, get it in place, measure, and go on, and then over time, sort of start specialize along some dimension that makes sense, whether it be industry or size of customer or geography. I mean, geography for sure, or something else. Okay.
What is, in your opinion, the most challenging thing, if you like, in implementing a data-driven sales and marketing organization? Is that, is it actually acquiring data? Is it agreeing what data to acquire and what metrics are relevant? Is it about visualizing, distributing, and sharing this in reports? Is it about, the culture you have in your organization? Can you elaborate a little bit about the different aspects here?
So I think, first of all, I think one has to think about when is the right time to do this. So there are times when it's too early, right? So if you are still founder-led in your sales process, it's going to be too early. If you have a few key salespeople you rely on, they do everything, and they close relatively few but very high value deals. There's not much data, it's too early, right? So, but once you get to sort of, that the sales is mainly handled by your regular staff, you have 10, maybe you close 10 customers a month, then you can start to become data driven. So I think that's the first part. Okay, and then to your point, then, okay, so what are the challenges? Well, I think it's two challenges. One is sort of putting the sort of process in place, and the second one is measuring and following up and reporting and improving. To put it in place, I think the first thing is there's really two aspects to a sales process. It's marketing and there's sales. So you need both on board. And I think the hard one, I mean, sales is always going to sell. Marketing is a little bit harder, right? Marketing, sometimes, if they're not used to SaaS, then, they do marketing and good things probably happen, but you don't know, right? Whereas in SaaS, you actually should know, right? It's digital marketing, it's lead generation, it's outbound calling, email follow-ups. So, you need a data-driven marketing team that signs up to deliver something that's measurable that they can hand over to sales. That's probably the hardest sort of thing to put in place. So in terms of basically getting the basics of such a process in place, and then you got to measure it, right? Now again, you got 4 salespeople. They use a CRM system, great, probably pretty messy. Focus on closing deals and not having great data. So sales operations, really good function. We didn't have sales operation for a really long time. Our sales CRM system was good but not great. We put sales operation in place about a year ago, and wow, and what a change. BI team or analytics team, similarly, right? These are people who actually love structuring data, checking that it's correct, making good reports. Salespeople, this is not what they're great at. So again, that's those are 2 teams to build, and then so data-driven marketing, sales ops, and a BI team. Put those in place if you can afford it. But you need at least one of these. One data-driven marketer, one sales ops person, and one BI person. It's enough. You can get going, and it's going to make a huge difference.
That's really interesting. So, I mean, obviously, at Funnel, you've built a data-driven culture from the get-go. But have you observed at all with any of your customers, and I'm probably thinking more about the larger ones with a longer history, that there's some, not necessarily resistance, but that there's a culture of we've always done things this way, etc. And when people put data and transparency in place, there's like a slight challenge to get that change through there. Is that something you guys see or experience at all?
So you mean basically of our customers, how they basically view data? I think that again, most of our leads are inbound, and so they come to us with a vision. SaaS companies that we work with are quite data driven, so, and we sort of love to work with the early adopters, the ones that are going to change it. We're actually now starting to see the sort of late majority coming, like the not the e-commerce company, but the retailers, like the old-fashioned retailers. I think they're starting to wake up, and they have a longer way to go. Their marketing teams are more entrenched in the old ways. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, interesting. So across your marketing and sales process, there's obviously a lot of different stages and things there. What are the key metrics that you are focused on? And is there like an end goal you're striving for, and is there a number of leading metrics that leads you up to that, or how do you think about that?
So I would say three main KPIs we look at in our sort of data-driven sort of sales and marketing machine: payback time, lifetime value over CAC ratio, and then really looking at net revenue churn, with an objective of having that being negative. Those 3 things, and I think of them, lifetime value over CAC and the net revenue churn are sort of the most important. And so if you start with the lifetime value over CAC ratio, and sort of think about how you can affect that, I mean, it really consists of 2 things: lifetime value and customer acquisition cost. So customer acquisition cost is really related to the go-to-market machine, right? So that's the one with the go-to-market machine that you mostly can affect, and so that's basically made up of how many leads do you have, and what does such a lead cost, and what's your conversion rate. So one is very much a top funnel metric, and one is a bottom or sort of optimizing the funnel. So those I think are the 2 things you need to do. You need to fill the funnel with as many leads as possible, and then make the funnel as efficient as possible. So that's customer acquisition cost. Lifetime value is mostly sensitive to churn, because you divide by churn, and churn is a small number. So if you want a high lifetime value, work on your churn. Churn is more about onboarding customers, having a good product, and good customer success, and that can have huge change in your lifetime value. So if you work on that, then you're in good shape with the LTV CAC. I think one other thing that I think is important that I would like to sort of highlight, that isn't so widely talked about. I haven't heard much about it, but it sort of struck me when we did our journey. So very often you focus for a go-to-market model on your payback time. Payback time should be between 12 and 24 months. Shorter is better. LTV CAC should be between 3 and 5. Higher is better. And what I have observed is that there's sort of like a inverse relationship with it. It's hard to get both to be good. So if you have a small deal size like we had initially, now we're $20,000, where it used to be $2,000, and your product isn't so sticky, but it's easy to install, you typically have a really good payback time, right? So you maybe have an inbound go-to-market model. So we had 9 months. It was fantastic. Lifetime value over CAC, not great. Our board, including you, were very supportive, but quite worried.
I remember those days, yes.
And I was pulling my hair, and I couldn't understand it. Like, why is our LTV over CAC ratio so crappy? Then our product started getting better. We started to have bigger customers, and churn started to go down. Lifetime value over CAC started to go up, and it went up and up and up and up, and we went over 5. We were over, way over 5. It's a fantastic CAC ratio. But actually, the payback time started to go a little bit the other way. Now, it's still good. I think it's like 13, 14 months. It's still good, but it's not 9 like it used to be. And I think that's important. Like, depending on where you are in like self-serve versus super enterprise. If you're in super enterprise, you shouldn't have 5 in LTV CAC ratio. It should be 8 or 9. I mean, because these large companies, they don't move in 5 years, in 6, 7 years. I mean, it takes a long time to swap out your product. So I think that's important to know. The most important thing I would say is measure what these numbers are for you, and do it objectively, fully loaded, not like founders selling everything and then you discount the salespeople, but really fully loaded, all the costs. And then try to improve them. If you improve them, your life's going to get better. And that's probably the most important, rather than just honing in on what they should be or not should be.
Yeah. And it's an interesting point there, and actually how you measure these things, like you say, to be honest with yourself and do it fully loaded, etc. But do you, because obviously as you are growing and as you are changing things on a monthly basis, it might be your marketing mix, it might be your product that's changing, you do another release, you focus slightly differently on these segments, you run campaigns, etc. How do you think about, how do you establish a baseline in terms of what you track, where you have these, inevitable variations all the time? Do you look at an average over a certain period of time? Do you look at certain cohorts, or how do you think about that?
That's a great question. So, you could do cohorts, you can do, a quarterly average, you can do running average. I have always struggled to get too much insight from cohorts. I think a quarterly average, you just get one data point per quarter. I like a 3 months average, 3 months running average. It smoothens it out, but you get new data points every day, and you see the trend where it's going. Except for churn. Churn, I do a 6 months average, because you divide by it's a small number. You don't want your metric to swing too widely. So with that, I find it works quite well. You're still going to get variations, but you're going to clearly see whether you're going up, down, or sort of staying over time flat. And that's kind of what you want to know. So that's what I would recommend. And then another sort of segmentation tip, I think, is to, once you have maybe 100 or 200 customers, is to segment them in terms of deal size or average contract value, and sort of look separately at like the bottom half and top half, or like 1/3 segments, and see whether they have different characteristics, especially in terms of churn. Maybe do something and try to attribute some of your customer acquisition costs to these, and see which are profitable, not. And that usually gives a lot of good insight, and it might give you some hope. If you think you have high churn, probably it's the smaller customers, and if you're moving in up market, then things are, and those customers have lower churn. That's going to give you a lot of faith that that's where you're going to end up. You don't have to worry so much about it.
Interesting. Actually have a slightly different question here, because obviously you sort of embody your product, right, in being a data-driven marketing and sales organization. That's what Funnel is all about. But what other products other than Funnel are you guys using to run your data-driven sales and marketing machine?
So we have anchored on HubSpot. We like it. We've been using it for a really long time, and so we use it. We started using it as a marketing automation tool, but then deployed CRM. We're going to deploy our web on it. We're using a lot of their sales tools, so that's sort of an anchor of what we do. And then we have a BI stack with a data warehouse from BigQuery and VSLooker on top of that. So that creates a lot. That's where our reporting is automated. And then, of course, for us, a really large piece is also funnel. Like all our data it comes in through funnel and is piped through funnel and then reported in different ways.
Cool. And if there's like one common mistake that you may have done or you observe other people doing when they attempt to build this sort of marketing and sales machine based on data, what would that be?
That's a good question. So what mistakes have we done? There have been so many. I think you kind of got to. I think we've been quite singularly focused on sort of specific strategies that work, and I think that's so I think that's served us well. I think that's actually what you should do in the beginning. There are so many different ways that you can acquire customers. What you need to do is find one that works, and then actually double down and triple down on it. But at some point, you actually got to start looking ahead and saying, okay, it's not going to carry us forever. You got to diversify. I got to find a couple of more legs to stand on, and then start building those. And it takes time. It takes a couple of years to build them, and you got to kind of really get good at them, and then sort of really do that, which we're doing. But could maybe have done a little bit earlier.
Okay, cool. So we have a number of questions coming in through the chat here, Fred. So I thought I'd try to answer at least a couple of them before we run out of time completely here. So. The first one we had was, what metrics do you track to assess the quality of leads being passed from marketing to sales? So the qualitative metric of the leads being passed from marketing to sales.
So that's a great question, because I think a really big takeaway is that not every lead is the same. They're hugely different. So what we have ended up doing is that we have sales development reps that look at each and every lead. Like they will literally look at it and say, okay, what do I think about this one? And they will look at basically what company does it come from. We look mainly at like how big is the company, like how many employees does the company have, but also then they will look at, okay, what's the title of that person booking, what is a good fit, and so on. So we actually touch every lead and inspect it between sort of marketing qualified lead and sales qualified lead.
Okay, cool. The next question was about sales operations. How does your sales operation person, or I guess lead, connect to the sales team? Is he a part of the team or a head? And I guess you would elaborate a little bit on what are the benefits of each.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we incubated sales operations actually in marketing. Our marketing is very data driven. So we incubated it there. It then started to become a team, and we have separated out. And now there is a head of sales operation and a team underneath, with a number of people. So that's a team. That's probably one of our teams that's grown the fastest. And so I think they should be their own. They should be their own. Entity between sitting between marketing and sales, and they're just so critical. And I think it's actually something that's more and more being recognized, that there's a critical function. It's a strategic function for a company. You have sales, your marketing, and then we call it actually commercial operations. So it's like it's for all our commercial functions, they do the operations.
Yeah, I would agree. And an interesting question that we frequently discuss in our company. So does that mean you have to have a chief revenue officer that this person reports into, oversees both marketing and sales? Or where would you put that person reporting into, either marketing or sales?
Yeah, so that's a good question. It's like product. Where does product report? Well, product best reports as high up in the organization as possible. For us, product reports to me. my co-founder is he's chief commercial officer, which is essentially chief revenue officer. So we have naturally a place for sales operations to report. And I think the chief revenue officer is more and more common. It used to be you had a VP of sales, and then you had, customer success started to emerge, and then we separately had like customer success, and that seems to now being grouped together a little more, and the revenue with sales ops as well.
Okay. So the next question is, as far as I can infer from somebody who's running a product-first organization, how do you see marketing's role evolve in an era where MQLs are losing their relevance and it's all about product qualified leads, PQLs?
Yeah, so that's a great question. PQLs, well, I would say product qualified leads are basically the leads in the sales process of a product-led, product-led organization, which is great if you have one and can have one. And basically the idea there is that you through a free product or free trial, but probably free product, you let people use your product, and then when there are enough signals to say, well, it's actually a reasonably sized company, they're really using the product, getting value of it, you signal that to sales can contact them and try to upsell them. So that's a fantastic thing to do. But not all companies have a product-led growth engine. Actually, most SaaS companies don't. Most SaaS companies are quite traditional, and then product-led growth or product qualified leads don't have a place in those organizations. So it's back to where we started, which is every sales and marketing machine is going to be different for every company. You've got to work out what works best for you. If you are founders that are very product oriented, bottom up, like freemium, then a product-led first strategy is great, and that's going to serve you well. But I don't think it's going to replace MQLs, because if you want a SaaS that sells into the super enterprise, then it's going to be about SQLs and MQLs.
Okay. We have a question here from Zoe. Are there any books or online resource recommendations you have for setting up such a data-driven organization, sales and marketing organization? Where do you get your inspiration from?
Yeah, so that is a great question. The first book, the first book written on this, I think, was Predictable Revenue, which is about separating leads and or lead generation and sales. I think that's a really good one. I think it's Mark Roberge from HubSpot wrote a great book on sort of the sales process in general. But actually, I think that the best content is from SaaStock, from Jason Lemkin. He nails this. He's got so much content on SaaStock for building the sales go-to-market machine. And then for the data-driven part, I think it's David Skock from Matrix Partner, and he's got a blog called For Entrepreneurs. And he's fantastic about talking about the metrics and measuring them and what they mean. And he's got a couple of really good sessions on SaaStock, which are on YouTube. There's one from 2017. If you Google it, that is just, it just walks through how do you start with product market fit, and then you build your go-to-market model, and then you start scaling, and how you should think about it, and why you should chart customer channel up front, and all these things.
Okay. Fantastic. Fredrik, this is obviously a very interesting discussion, and I think we could go on for quite some time. I'm sorry to everyone who's posted question if we haven't been able to answer them, but I think we're officially out of time right now. So what I would suggest is that you follow up with Fredrik or myself through the event media here, and we'll try to answer any questions that came unanswered here. Thanks for your time, Fredrik. Really interesting discussion, and thanks everybody else for listening in.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.